Hello, today we're going to talk about 6 functional movement patterns in strength training. We're going to go through a couple of examples, and we're also going to talk about where these exercises or movements are actually done on a day-to-day basis. Now, some of you may be surprised because you may think that strength training is only for people who want to look better, lose body fat, or build strength. And whilst this is true, you'd be surprised that some of these movements are actually what everyone does on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't matter your age, your gender, your ethnicity, where you are in the world, they're what everyone does frequently. And if you can master these 6 functional movements, there's not really a lot you can't do on a frequent basis. So, in no particular order, let's get straight into it. The first movement pattern then is the squat. Now this is an exercise that is both hip and knee dominant. So it's a compound lift that uses both of these joints. You're going to start off by engaging your hip, so bending at the hip, and then you're going to bend at the knee until your thighs are parallel to the floor. So this is kind of like the minimum range of motion that we want to work at. You want to make sure that your bum is in line with your knees. If you can't do this, then don't worry, there are a few regression methods that you can do over time to get to this, but for this video I'm not really going to talk about the correct technique or how to execute each movement. I'm really going to talk about where these movements are used every day. So something like getting up and down from a chair, getting up and down from a toilet, or simply standing up from a seated position. The coaching cue that I use with a lot of my clients really when they've never done a squat before is simply imagine like you're sitting down, right? So I might put a box behind them and simply say, okay, try sitting down on this box. Ideally, the height of the box should be around their knee height so that when they sit down, their thighs, again, are parallel to the floor. All right, so standing up, sitting down from a chair, getting in and out of a car, from a seat of any sort, an armchair, a sofa, this is the squat movement pattern. So the second movement pattern would be a push. Now, your first exercise you may think of is a push-up, and this is true. However, for the push movement, there is actually 2 variations for this. So the first one is a horizontal push, so something like a push-up or a bench press. Those are a couple of example exercises. You've also got a vertical push, so something like a seated shoulder press or a barbell military press, overhead press. These are exercises that definitely use the vertical push movement pattern. Now, some examples in real life that you might use for the push, let's start off with a horizontal push firstly, is for example if your car's broken down on the motorway and you're trying to push the car forward. A bit of manual labor here, but that's definitely using the horizontal push movement pattern. If you want to use the vertical push movement pattern, then something like placing your suitcase into an overhead compartment on a plane or a train, this will use the vertical push, and it's worth strengthening your shoulder muscles to be able to get some strength and get that heavy bag into the compartment. Now, the third movement pattern is a pull. Now, this is pretty much the exact opposite of the push movement pattern, and just like what we've discussed, it's got 2 variations. So just like the push, the pull movement, you've got a horizontal pull and you've also got a vertical pull. The horizontal pull would be something like a barbell bent over row, all right? Or you can also use a dumbbell row, a bench row. An example of this in real life would be if you need to drag something along the floor, something heavy or something light, even if you need to drag a trolley or a heavy suitcase. This is definitely going to utilize the horizontal pulling movement pattern. A nicer example is if you want to embrace a loved one, if you want to pull someone in for a hug or even a kiss, then this could also use the horizontal pulling movement. And for the vertical pulling movement, an example of this exercise would be a pull-up, obviously, but you've also got a lat pull down where you're literally starting off with your arms extended and then you're pulling down from the top. Now, this example in real life might not be as obvious, however, I have seen it in, for example, a church, if you need to ring a bell. There's a church that I go to where the handle is literally like a grip handle that you use in the gym, so like a single arm pull down. That's something that you could do definitely. So developing that back strength will definitely go a long way with helping your vertical pulling movements. Now the next one that we have, number 4, will be the hinge movement, also known as the bend, but we're going to call it hinge for now. So this is a hip dominant movement where you're bending at the hips and you're leaning forward. You want to make sure that your spine is neutral for this position to ensure that you're not placing any tension or stress on your lower back and that the movement is really coming from your lower body. So ideally from your hips, your glutes, or your leg muscles. Now, an exercise example of this would be the the barbell deadlift or a kettlebell swing, all right? So anything that you're engaging your hips, you're bending over, leaning forward, keeping that neutral spine, that would be a hip hinge movement. Now, where would you use this in real life? Well, I would say if you're picking something off the floor, so again, we're using the suitcase example, but if you've got a heavy suitcase on the floor, you need to place it up into your boot of your car, into your trunk, as Americans might call it. You want to make sure that you bend your knees and that you hinge the hip, push the hips back, and then you pick up the suitcase so you can safely lift it up without injuring or placing unwanted stress on your lower back or your spine. Now the next movement pattern we have is the lunge. Now, unlike the hinge that we just discussed, the lunge is actually a knee dominant exercise. So contrast to the hinge movement, we're going to be using more knees. But an example of where you might use this in the gym would be a lunge, obviously, but you've also got something like a Bulgarian split squat. I know a Bulgarian split squat, it's got the word squat in, but it really is a lunge movement pattern because you're engaging more of your knees. But the best thing about the lunge is that it's unilateral, so it's working your left side and then it's working your right side. And the good thing with this is that it's going to strengthen one side at a time. This is something you can't really do if you're doing a bilateral exercise like squats and deadlifts all the time. It's good to vary up your training and do left-right. And by doing this, you will also improve your balance, your coordination, and also strengthen the stability of your ankle, your hip muscles, as well as obviously your knee. So this is an exercise, I would say it is a bit more advanced. If you struggle with a full body weight lunge, I would say start off with a split squat where you've got one leg behind the other, and then just focus on bending at the knee and lowering yourself down. So real life examples with the lunge, well, that one's easy. This, I would say, if you want to go up steps, then obviously you're going to be using a lot of knee engagement here. If you're bending over to tie your shoelace, again, this is going to be in a lunge stance pretty much. And the sixth and final movement pattern, something that isn't really counted as a compound lift, would be a twist or rotation. The example in the gym would be a Russian twist, or you could be doing a wood chop, or you could be doing a cable arm swing. All right, so this is basically going to work on improving that stability of your trunk. And a real life example might be if you're swinging a golf club or you're going to swing a baseball bat, that's definitely going to use a bit of rotation in the hips, so it's worth strengthening. It's not just your ab muscles that's going to work, you're going to obviously work your obliques, you're going to work your transverse abdominis, you're going to work all the muscles in your core, including your diaphragm, your breathing muscles, so it's worth strengthening for sure. There you have it, guys, just a really short video of me rambling on about the 6 movement patterns which you need to do into your own strength training. So like I said at the start, if you can master these movements, you'll be able to move a lot better in your day-to-day. You'll be able to strengthen your muscles, whether it's in the legs, in your upper body, and you'll feel stronger overall, and trust me, there is no better feeling than this. So thanks a lot for watching. Sorry if my thoughts were a little bit all over the place, still working on speaking to the camera like I would with a normal human being, but that's just the way it goes. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. That would help me out massively, and I will